This is TWiT.
If you've been missing Google Plus Circles, well, let me tell you, Twitter's got you back. Twitter Circles operate in much the same way as Google Plus Circles. And what were Google Plus Circles? This was a way on Google Plus where you could take a number of contacts and like group them into a particular group. So this would be my family circle. This could be my close friends circle. These could be my acquaintances circle. So that when I'm sharing something, I'm not just blasting it out to the world and everyone can read it, although I could choose to do that. This would allow me to kind of curate who I share certain things with, right? And I feel like Google Plus, that was definitely one thing out of the gate that they were like really, optimistic about, and people were like, "Oh, wow, that gives you so much control." And I feel like, at least in my experience, I didn't use them nearly as much as I think Google envisioned, only because it became more work to decide how do I curate these things and take the time to make sure these circles are made with the right people, and then how do I choose that I'm sharing this with this circle and not that circle and everything. So I didn't use it as much as probably other people did. But Twitter is deciding they want to try and do a little bit of that too. So this is rolling out widely. This is not a test. This is not a drill. Android, iOS, web happening now. 150 users per circle. And then, yes, you can send tweets to a group of users as opposed to all users. No one is notified when they are added or removed from the circle. So there's no shame there. If you decide, I don't want that person in that circle anymore, you can remove them. They're not going to get notified of that. They just won't see what you post to that circle anymore. So did we miss Google Plus Circles? Are we happy that Twitter's now taken the flag and planted it firmly in their camp? What do you think?
I don't know. I will add this, by the way. It's funny that this story comes up because I'm hiring at my day job, and I've been reviewing resumes, and somebody submitted their resume, and on things they know, they listed Google Plus, which I was like, really? I was like, you might want to update your resume.
A little outdated.
A little outdated, yeah. It was like one of those blocks of social networks and things like that, and Google Plus was in the middle, and I was like, wait a minute. But this idea of a nested follow group, basically, or nested target audience, right? So you have, let's say you have 1,000 people that you follow or that follow you, right? But you only want 150, you know what I mean? This idea of this nested group within the universe, it's almost acknowledging that the majority of people that you're following or follow you are not valuable. It's adding a layer of value to a subset of users, right? Which I find interesting. Especially given the democratization platform that Twitter apparently has been built on, right? Which clearly is going by the wayside. But I don't know. It's interesting, and I feel like Circles was interesting, but never really, like you, Jason, I never really harnessed the true power of it. Right?
Yeah. So. I have seen already on Twitter a couple of posts that said, "If you see this, you're in my circle." It's
right.
This is so important.
It's almost like Path. Do you remember Path? Wait, do you remember?
Oh yeah,
remember Path, Jason?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Path was an old social network app that I knew a lot of the people that worked on it, and it was built on some sociological tenet that any human could only manage up to 100 relationships or whatever it was, right? Yeah. And so it wasn't a matter of being followed by 1 million people on Twitter. It was no, you're only being followed by people you're actually friends with, right? And so this seems to be similar to that. Let me see if I can find the exact
yeah, it was 100 or 150. I can't remember, but it was right around there.
I think it was 150.
Yeah,
150. 100. Yeah, it said a friend cap of 150 people.
Same with Circles. So they're operating under the same tenet.
Yep.
Yeah, very, very interesting connection you just made there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is really cool. That is, back in those early days when we actually thought social media would be a respectable place for as not necessarily as a substitute or addition to our normal social relationships, and not a festering cesspool of all kinds of stuff. Wasn't that nice back then? We had all hopes that social media could just be an add-on to our lives.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's been a long time on the internet. I'm really sorry to my friends.
It's fair. No, it's okay.
Twitter,
we're all there.
it just.
It's tiring.
I hate that. The whole circle thing. So I have a couple minds about this. So I kind of see the value in that, like, so you have like Facebook groups, right? Where, especially for like local things, like there's like a local adult Denver dance class where a lot of like the local businesses, if you're interested in dance, can kind of have a local, place where they can share news. And I think a big trouble with Twitter right now is like noise to signal ratio, which is absolutely horrific. They have communities, which are good ways of grouping people. But again, there's not a lot of really good way for you to kind of filter out. So I kind of can see where Circles kind of fits into this. It's like a little bit tighter than a community. It's selective, but it is kind of weird. And I could totally see how the fact that it's not transparent, because that's one thing that can be said for like Facebook groups and other kind of similar mechanisms, is that it's transparent. You are joining a specific group for some specific purpose, whereas this is just literally like, here are my friends. And so I just feel like either, I don't know, I especially with the way that Twitter is used now, as like this fire hose of doom scrolling and news and chatter and whatever. I don't know if reining in your Twitter feed with circles either as an input or an output. I don't know. I just feel like it's a little, it's just like a lot. It's like literally like a fire hose, and you've got like a tiny little cork that you're trying to like put into it so that you can kind of like control both the message in and message out. And I don't know. It also kind of feels like a weird catch up. I feel like Twitter is trying to kind of be where different social media networks are at. So like they have their like Instagram stories type thing. They've got their Spaces thing now, and they've got other things that are trying to. They're all doing that. That's, to be fair, they're all doing that. So I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I probably won't use it, even though as a total Twitter addict, I probably won't use them. I just
can't think of much that I choose to share on Twitter, because I'm not the kind of Twitter user at this point that shares everything about my life. Like, there was a time when I would share pretty much anything. Now, I've really tampered down on how much I share and the things I choose to share. So using circles, I suppose, would have been useful for me, for older Twitter user me, versus now where I'm like, well, I already just kind of share things that like I don't mind everybody knowing. Yeah. So why would I, I am, but at the same time, I am certain that this feature will be very useful for certain people, right? Who might attract, just in what they do or how they share, might attract a certain subset of users that they don't want following their stuff. And so fine, keep that limited to the group that will be open and friendly to that message. And that sounds very useful. It's just not something that I have a need for, I guess. Maybe I will. I don't know.
Well, what's interesting, and as I think about this, is as we use social media, like I'm with you, Jason. I have toned down. Like I don't post nearly as much on Twitter or on Facebook as I used to. I interact probably the most with Instagram, and honestly, I take advantage of the close friends stories filter, where I've self-selected a handful of people, which honestly is probably around 100, right? That see photos, of my kids and stuff like that, as opposed to everybody seeing. Like I'm able to. So it's the same concept as circles. So
yeah. Interesting.
Also props to Professor Panda Bear, who mentioned that the 150 is Dunbar's number, which is, quote on Wikipedia, the suggested cognitive limit to the number of people with whom one can maintain stable social relationships. The Dunbar's number. So there you go.
There you go. Thank you for sharing that. That's the name.